Now today is Tuesday, so you may have noticed something is amiss. Yes, today is the day specifically designated for Black Clover. But unfortunately, it's one of many in a long list of anime, manga, and video games that has been affected by the ongoing pandemic. But just because we don't have an episode to watch doesn't mean our love for the series has faltered. So with the goal of keeping Black Clover Tuesdays alive and kicking, I'm gonna try something new, something I have never done before and never thought I would. It's time for a top 5 video. Okay, so please bear with me. I'm going at this super amateurish. I've never done a top anything, but I thought it would be something new and a little bit more interesting to give insights on my opinions rather than facts and figures that I usually, make up my anime afterthoughts. So the only question now is what to pick for this video. Do we go against, the coolest magic, the best designed characters? Hell, maybe it's the most badass enemies. I mean, there's a lot of choices when it comes to picking a topic for a video of this format. But then it came to me, one thing I don't do a lot is talk about the manga. As I've made it abundantly clear very early on, back when my main series used to be called 1 Minute Reactions, I let the world know that I am anime only. But what you might not know is I actually do purchase the manga when it comes out, and I read up to where the anime is. Unfortunately, the English version of the manga is lagging behind. Currently, I believe there's only 20 out, with the 21st and 22nd pre-order available. I unfortunately have only up to volume 19, so that's only what I'm gonna judge about. You may ask yourself, well, what exactly are you going to judge it on? I'm actually gonna judge it on the design of the front cover. Yes, the cover page of a manga is actually pretty important. It needs to capture your attention. It needs to sell the potential reader on this book. Personally, what do I like to see? Well, I like to see a lot of vibrance, a lot of color. I also like to see a lot of contrast between, the characters in the background itself. The layout or the composition of the image is very important, as well as the subject matter. Now, looking over the 19 volumes I have, I noticed one thing. This video is gonna be pretty fucking hard. I liked a lot of these covers. I mean, there was one or two that still, in my opinion, looked beautiful, but had like a major flaw I just couldn't look around. But narrowing all these volumes down to 5 was actually a pretty tough thing. But seeing how it's my opinion, I said fuck it and just went with it. So here we go. These are my top 5 choices for Black Clover manga covers. Now, starting out my list at number 5 is Black Clover Volume 2. There are quite a few things I like about this cover art. First is the use of color as well as brightness and contrast. If you look at this image, overall it's very light. I'd say besides Volume 2, Volume 19 is probably one of the lightest. But what Volume 2 does better is highlight the focal point. If you look at Volume 19, yes, the darker body of Noelle does stand out, but unfortunately her head seems to disappear in the merging image of her siblings in the background. But with Volume 2, my eyes are almost instinctively attracted to the sea of red coming from Captain Vengeance's cloak, making the darker silhouette of Yuno truly stand out. Another highlight of this image is its overall composition. If you look at it, it's a perfect example of symmetry. The image itself provokes a sense of balance. Yes, I concur that an asymmetrical image is usually more dynamic, but pairing this balance with the overall lighter aesthetics gives this image almost a calming effect. Lastly is the subject matter itself. Just looking at this image, it tells its own story. Who is this wind-clad boy staring back at me? What is this ominous feeling I'm getting from the mysterious cloaked figure? Who are those people in the background? Are they friends or are they foes? Imagine going into the series not knowing anything about it and you pick up this volume. I believe there's enough intrigue and mystery in this image alone to sell me on at least looking past the cover. So overall, that's why Volume 2 is my number 5. Now up next at my number 4, this is where the list gets a little bit harder to decide. But for me, I came down to Black Clover Volume 6. Once again, this image feels really well balanced, including a great use of contrast, this time having a light figure versus a dark background. But I believe what sold me the most on this volume is the subject matter itself. Yes, our first volume featuring Yami Tsukihira, the captain of the Black Black Bulls, truly the big brother and mentor of our group of misfits. Not to mention one of the most supreme badasses in the series so far. I mean, just give a look at this image. He's literally pointing a katana right at us, like he wants to jump out of his series and fuck with us. Like, the only thing that would have made this image a tad bit better is to have no shadow on Yami's front at all, thus increasing the amount of contrast with the background. But like I said, overall what sold me was that this was Yami. And because this is my list, I chose it as my number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Black Clover Volume 14. Now you may have noticed earlier on when describing Volume 2, I left out Volume 14 because I didn't want to give my entire list away very early on. Basically, take whatever I said about Volume 2 and improve upon it. Not only we get another use of symmetry, as well as an overall great composition, Tabata has seemed to improve the ability to make the focal points stand out, upping the vibrance of this cover to the extreme, yet keeping the background primarily reds and grays, allows the colorful duo of siblings Finril and Langris to truly pop. Not to mention, once again, this image paints its own story. The two individuals in the foreground are about ready to go at it, one with a look of determination and the other one with a smirk of arrogance. But ever looking in the background are two individuals highlighted by a smear of red that goes along with the overall blood-soaked background that we see. Now, sticking with the theme of improving upon my earlier choices, in at number 2 is Black Clover Volume 16. Basically the same thing I said about Volume 14 towards Volume 2. Volume 16 is like Volume 6. But in this instance, Tabata took my one and only critique of the use of shadow on Yami Sukihira and completely turned it around this time, utilizing different layers as well as different levels of shadows. What do I mean? Well, look at it. We have Julius Novacrona in the foreground, and he's obviously the most lit. Very clean, very bright, especially compared to the dark blue background we see. Well, in the midground, we have a somewhat well lit, but still kind of shadowed out Yami Sukihira, but still kind of pop compared to that dark background, but doesn't pull too much focus from the foreground. And in the background, almost hiding in the shadow, is William Vengeance. Almost completely covered in shadows, except for a few highlights. Just bright enough so the viewer can actually see him. Also, do you remember when I said I picked Volume 6 primarily because it's Yami? Well, this time I picked it primarily because it's the Wizard King. I mean, let's face it, he's a super badass character and very likable, so why wouldn't I be automatically drawn to a cover who primarily focuses on him? I mean, come on. Now, before we get to my top pick of Black Clover covers, I have to give an honorable mention. Basically, any cover you don't see listed here, that's an honorable mention. Every one is great, in my opinion. Yes, there are some flaws, but it seems the further we go on, Tabata is still improving upon his art, as well as his color balance and layout and composition. The overall subject matter, it just seems every cover we get is getting better and better, and I absolutely love all of them. And that's what made this video so difficult to actually create. There are a lot of amazing choices, and once again, this is just my personal opinions. Speaking of personal opinions, if you've made it this far into the video, do me a favor, go down to the comments and list your favorite Black Clover cover art, and please let me know the reason. So here we are at the moment of truth. In at number 1, Black Clover Volume 15. Do I really need to explain why this is my number 1 choice? Okay, so first and foremost, on the opposite end of the spectrum compared to a well-balanced symmetrical image, we have a dynamic asymmetrical one. I mean, geez, just look at Mereoliona's pose. It exudes almost a fiery passion of rage or energy. It just is this primal image. You can almost hear her screaming just by looking at this thing. Adding to the primal aesthetic is the art style itself. Instead of the clean-cut lines we're used to, we have these rough and raw, very bold outlines. Hell, take away the color and you're still left with this almost frantic energy. The image also has well-balanced colors. Look at the bottom half. It's this bluish kind of muted tan, and at the top is a very vibrant orangish red, similar to the back of Volume 10. Last but not least, when dealing with overall aesthetics, is the composition. Yes, look at the layout of this image. It is one singular character. No other volume has one character on it. Yes, one could argue that volume 6 has Yami, but in reality, the eyes peering from the background belong to Patri, and we all know it. But just look at that cover. The entire thing is Mereoleona. Okay, I'll admit it. The same reason where I pick a lot of these things is I'm biased. Mereoleona is one of my favorite characters of the series. Not to mention one of the best female characters I've seen in a series in a long time. She exudes a sense of power and confidence you don't see in a lot of heroines. Now, I wholeheartedly agree that Black Clover has some of the best females in anime and manga, especially when it comes to character development. I argue that none are as badass as Mereoleona. And once again, this is why Black Clover Volume 15 is my #1 pick. So there we have it. That is my top 5 covers for the Black Clover manga. What'd you think of today's video? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you agree? Did you disagree? Was it a hit? Was it a miss? Like I said, I'm still new to these top 5 videos. I definitely went at it more freestyle than I would like to, but if this is something you want to see more of, just let me know. And I guess the only question now is how to sign off on today's video. I think we'll just stick with the tried and true. So with all that being said, and knowing deep down somewhere Tabata and the animators are hard at work to bring us the anime and manga we all love, I cannot wait for future episodes, and in this case, volumes.